one of the main thing that is plaguing young people a lot is that they feel like they have to rush things. I don't know if you noticed this, but they feel like they have to rush things. They have to move fast. They have to beat the competition. They have to go always on all cylinders. They have to go, 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 as if they think that life is a race to them. It's a race to the top. It's a race to be first, whatever it may be. And no wonder if you feel like life is a race, no wonder you feel tired and, burnt out and maybe fed up with the whole idea. Because the whole conception of what life is that it's a race. And you can see this.
Hey friend, welcome back to the 1010 Book Club channel. If you're new here, my name is Billy John. I seek my life purpose through experiment, and I'm based in Penang. On this channel, it is best place to explore knowledge and books that help us to think and gain life wisdom. Subscribe to us now and join us in our learning journey. Aiman Azlan is an all-rounded optimist and a youth mentor. He is also a YouTuber on topics such as self-reflection, marriage, and family. Link to his YouTube channel is in the description. Aiman is going to share his book, Unfollow the Flow, with an interesting perspective on how you can look at your life and create your desired life. Let the journey start now.
It was unclear what the world will be at the moment, at that time at least. All we knew was there's this virus that's being circulating, and we thought, okay, we had viruses before, this could be nothing. But then as time progresses, we realize slowly and slowly that this is not like what we had before. I mean, the last time we had something like this was the time when nobody that we knew were even born. It was about 100 years ago when the Spanish flu hit. That was in 1918, I believe. That was a long time ago. Not even my grandparents were there. That's how long ago it was. So we don't have any experience with this. Really, none of us. Our parents have no idea how to deal with it. We don't have any idea how. Our companies don't have any idea how. We were learning as we go. And in my line of work, I deal a lot with young people, teenagers, early 20s, and even 30s and 40s. And during this time, what I realize is that more and more people are talking about being, how should I put it? Being lost. Yeah, being lost. And they express that feeling in so many different ways, whether it be in their relationship, they feel lost. They don't know their husband anymore. They don't know their wife anymore. Or feeling like, alamak, I have to see this person every single day at home. And with kids not having to go to school, everything is at home. It's all crammed in that space where we don't really felt used to it. Before, we send our kids to school, we go to work. That's our routine. Now, all routines are out the window. Everything that we're used to are out the window. This whole idea of new norm is being putting out there time and time again. But many of us don't like this new norm. We like for things to go back as they were. Many of us feel the same. I'm with you. I feel the same. But reality is reality, and we can't change it. And the reality is that it won't be like it was before. I mean, look at us now. Companies are changing the way they work. A lot of companies are saying that even after the pandemic, they may still do remote work because the pandemic proves that it's efficient, right? So I think this whole idea of new norm really hits people hard, and that's probably why one of the reasons they feel lost. Workers don't feel passionate about their work anymore, if ever they feel the same way before. Students don't feel like they want to do homework. And some of you may have kids at home. I have two small boys. One is in kindergarten, the other one is in daycare. And the one in kindergarten is showing me stress symptoms, right? Feeling like, oh, I want to play with my friends. I don't like this house anymore because everything is like the same thing all over again. So that's how I would put it, feeling lost. And I felt lost. So the idea to write this book came from that instant where we all share this feeling of lost. We don't know where to go from here. This is totally new. All our plans are disrupted. So I flashed back to myself 10 years before, because 10 years before the book came out, I was probably 18, 19, and I was struggling with what do I want to do with my life. And probably some of you are struggling with it right now. And I picked up this book by the late Sir Ken Robinson, who died sadly earlier this year. Sir Ken Robinson. If you don't know who he is, you should pick up his book. Sir Ken Robinson. He's a how do I say? He's a researcher in education. He does a lot of good work in education, in how we do schooling, in how we think of education, in how we rethink education. And his book entitled The Element was the book that I found just randomly walking to a bookstore, pick up this book, and I started reading when I was like 18, 19 years old. And this book changed the way that I think about, career, how I think about my life moving forward from then on, how I think about, this whole idea that life should be this one straight line. Maybe some of you are familiar with this line where you start at school, and you go through all the big exams. If in Malaysia you go through PMR, when it was my time, you go through SPM, you go through university, you get your degree and get your job, and you get your house, your car, you get married, you get your kids, and then you raise up your kids get out of the house, and then you die. That's basically the line, right? That's the line. One straight, very nice line. And that book disrupted that line for me, because this book is talking about, changing course, right? Making different choices than other people. It's about challenging what people say is how we used to do things. Talking about education doesn't have to be just about academics. I'm like, what? Wait. All of my life, I thought education was academics. And this book talks about, and by the way, just mind you, this person, Sir Ken Robinson, he's a teacher. He's a professor. He's a well-renowned professor. So he's talking about school in a different manner that I'm not used to. Talking about, intelligence being not just math and science and engineering. And I'm like, wait, that's all that I've been taught to all my life. And he talks about, intelligence being that, if you know how to dance, that's intelligence. If you know how to cook, that's intelligence. If you know how to play sports, that's intelligence. So starting from that point, I start to think about, okay, how should we live then, if not academic excellence? So from 18 until about 25, 26 or something, I start to change my mindset to think of life in a different way. It's not just academics, not just STEM, not just this one straight line. Then the pandemic hits. And all the things that I've been thinking about the past 10 years started to come together, because people start to email me, start to message me on social media, talking about, I don't know what I'm supposed to do anymore. All my life, there's this plan, there's this one straight line, and there's no line anymore, right? How am I going to do work, right? I just got fired and things like that. So I started writing, put down all my thoughts accumulated over the past 10 years since I was 18, 19 in the form of a book, because I had the thought in my head already. So why not put it in writing? It's not complete, I would say. I wouldn't say that this is like the complete work of 10 years of research. No, there's no research. It's just 10 years of thinking, 10 years of living and experiencing and interacting with people. And then I realized this is the time to write it. right? When the pandemic hits, when people are struggling with this question of what's next, what to do now, what is my life going to become, young people especially, and you probably know young people like that, or you are among those young people. So this book, if I can summarize it, I'm going to share with you one slide. I know that she said that there's no slide. There's no slide, but there's just one slide because I'm trying my best to paint pictures with words, but some people may not see the picture clearly. So I'm going to paint the picture on a slide. Okay. Okay, so this is the book that we're talking about today. If you want to know the cover. And if I were to summarize what the book is all about, without like giving any spoilers, this is how I would do it. So the way I like analogies, and I hope you do too, and the way that I like to approach the heavy topic in the book, because we are talking about heavy stuff, right? About meaning of life, about purpose, passion, happiness, success. So those are all big stuff. So I like to put it all in terms of a simple analogy that I think everybody can understand. And the analogy that I chose is a journey. And journey has three components. Any journey that you take has three components. There's the destination, where you want to go. There's the navigation, how you're going to get there. And there's transportation, like what vehicle, what means of transportation you're going to take to go to the destination. And transportation, I divide it into two parts. There's the type of transportation, whether you're walking, swimming, taking a flight, or boat, or a car, or a bus. And if you're taking a car, there's different types of cars. There's the old car, which barely starts. There's the fast car, which you can go 0 to 100 in 0.1 second. I know that's impossible, but I don't know cars. And then there's fuel, right? Even if you have a Ferrari, if you don't have a fuel, that Ferrari is not going to go anywhere, right? So you need those two things. You need the type of car, the type of vehicle that you're going to use, and also fuel. You need fuel in order to move. And this diagram kind of shows you the big picture of what makes a journey a journey. And if you want to know what each of these components means, don't worry, I got you covered. So journey represents your life, my life, your life, each other's life. Destination represents the purpose. Where are you going, right? Do you know where you're going? Do you have an idea of where you're going? Navigation is your principle. Your principle is how you navigate. You want to choose left or right. You want to go straight or you want to go back. You want to go faster or slower. Your principle will help you decide that. And transportation is you. You're the one moving, right? So you are the transportation. And you, the transportation, I divide into two. Type, which means your ability. Granted, we can't do everything, but there are some things we can do. You can call this talents, you can call this skills, you can call this whatever you want, but I call it ability. What you're able to do, or what you're able to learn, what you're able to acquire. And a fuel is passion. Like I said, even if you have the best car in the world, but you have no fuel, your car is not going anywhere. You can press the throttle, the accelerator, all you want, pedal to the metal. It's not going to go anywhere because there's no fuel. So that's passion. So if you want to screen capture this, you can do it now because I'm going to exit the screen now. I'm going to put the slide down. That's all I want to show you today.
This is a very
You can
good
screenshot.
Aiman.
Yeah, thanks.
This is a very good analogy and getting through that. And once people are screenshotting this one, I felt that if at any time you have questions to ask, I think do stop, Aiman, in case things slip off their mind before you go to other more interesting points. People can ask you question on this one first.
Yeah, cool. I don't mind. I don't mind. You can ask me questions at any time. Anytime. Do not worry about that. Okay, screenshot in 3, 2, 1. All right, exit. Pew. Okay, am I back? Am I filling up your screen now?
Yes,
Yep.
we can see you.
Okay, done. Okay, that's the image that I want to implant into your mind for today, for this session. And that's the same analogy that I use in the book, by the way. It's the same analogy. And The whole idea of putting that analogy forward, like really drilling down the idea that life is a journey, is because one of the main thing that is plaguing young people a lot is that they feel like they have to rush things. I don't know if you noticed this, but they feel like they have to rush things. They have to move fast. They have to beat the competition. They have to go always on all cylinders. They have to go, 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 as if they think that life is a race to them. It's a race to the top. It's a race to be first, whatever it may be. And no wonder if you feel like life is a race, no wonder you feel tired and, burnt out and maybe fed up with the whole idea, because the whole conception of what life is that it's a race. And you can see this either in professional setting or even in personal setting. In professional setting, you may feel this. As Intel workers, you may feel this, right? You may feel like, okay, we have to be first, or we have to be quick. We have to go, go, go. We have to beat the competition. In certain situations, I get it. It is a race. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not a race. You get my point? In certain moments can be a race. Like when you're in a race car, right? You're obviously in a race. But in the grand scheme of things, it's not a race. This is something that another author by the name of Simon Sinek, probably some of you heard his name. Simon Sinek wrote a book, his latest book called The Infinite Game. It's a very interesting book. I highly recommend it. So in the book Infinite Game, he brings forth this idea that he got from somewhere else. So it wasn't his idea, but he expanded it. And I like the idea of having that because it relates to this book that I wrote quite coincidentally without me realizing it. So the Infinite Game, just a short bit, is that you see yourself in a game that is infinite. It's not finite. Means that there's no end. The players play continuously with the resources that they have, and they will keep on going literally until they die. It's an infinite game. And then the opposite of that is finite game. Now, to understand finite game, you can understand it from what we know as a game, like a soccer game. You have the beginning, you have the end, you have a very specific goal, and you have to beat your competition in order to win. You have a scoreboard, so everything, there's a rule how you play the game, and after the game ends, the game ends. The point of that book, from my view, is to sort of shift our mindset about life itself in the grand scheme of things. Do you see life as a finite game, or do you see life as an infinite game? Meaning life doesn't end just because you die, Like, for example, Sir Ken Robinson, the author that I just mentioned, he died March of this year. Yes, his life ended. That's true. But his legacy didn't. People still remember him. We're talking about him today, right? His work, his body of work is still there for teachers and educators to refer to. His books are still there. His talks are still there. You can even go on YouTube right now and type in Sir Ken Robinson. TED Talk is one of the most viewed TED Talks in the history of TED Talks. He's a great orator. It's why he's one of the people that I look up to in terms of his public speaking skills. So that is an example of somebody who lived an infinite life. Somebody who leave a legacy that will last far beyond him. And you can think of other examples as well, like great writers that you admire. Maybe great philosophers like Plato, Aristotle. They died a long time ago, but their work remains. That's the idea of being infinite. It doesn't mean that you live forever. You don't live forever, but your legacy does. And coming back to the book that I wrote, that's why I'm against the idea of seeing life as a race, because I see a lot of those in young people. They want to graduate first. They want to get the job first. They want to get married first. They want to have a child first. Even in personal life, people are still racing. How many of you have kids? You can just type in the comment section, in the chat. How many of you have kids? Do you notice that people have this racing mentality in parenting? Right? Oh, my son already can read. What is it? Oh, your son cannot read? Oh, your son is slow. Oh, my son can already do this, this, and that. Oh, when is your son going to do? When's your daughter going to do? There's this mentality that we're racing these kids against each other, right? And then once they go to school, again, another race. Like, oh, this boy got an A. Why don't you get an A? And then once they get to university, another race. Which university should you choose? And then once they got into university, another race. When will you graduate? Or you graduate later than your friends. What's wrong with you? And then they get a job. And a lot of young people think, oh, if I get a job, then my everybody will stop asking me questions. Wrong again. Questions will still come. When are you going to get married? Huh? You're going to be single forever? When are you going to get married? And you might be thinking, okay. Maybe if I got married, all this question will stop. All this race will stop. Okay, I got married. Done. Wrong again. When are you going to have a child? Huh? Are you just going to be two people forever? When am I going to get my granddaughter or my grandson? And then you might be thinking, okay, maybe this is the last race that I'm going to get. Okay, I'm going to get me a son or a daughter. I don't care, just a child, so that, people will get off my back. Okay, I got me a son. All right, good. Question over, right? No. When's the next child going to come? I mean, poor your firstborn. He or she is lonely. He or she needs a brother, needs a sister. Come on. And on and on and on and on. This is a cycle that I noticed when I was 18. Keeps happening. And I thought that, does it have to be that way? And then when the pandemic hits, all this race that we have been on for such a long time suddenly becomes shaken, That's what's interesting about the pandemic. And I'm not like pro-pandemic. Nobody is. But the interesting thing about the pandemic is that it brings forth all these questions about us being here, why we're here, where we're going, questions about our relationships that we may not even think about. If you're married, probably right now you have questions about your relationship. I do, right? So the pandemic exposes some of the things that we may take for granted, or we may be on autopilot for such a long time. And that's why I thought, okay, now or never I have to write this book. And I put forth the idea of a journey. And a journey, if you contrast it with the race, in a race, you're thinking of being there first. That's what a race is all about, right? You want to be number one, being there first. But in a journey, you're thinking of what? Not being there first. First, you think about, okay, where are we going, really? And then, how are we going to get there? What's the safest way to get there? And you're not thinking of speed necessarily. You're just thinking of what's the safest route? What's the best route? How am I going to enjoy most of my journey there? That's the question you ask when you're in a journey. I don't know about you, but I've been backpacking when I was single back then. And those are the things that I think about. I didn't think about, we have to go here in 3 days and we have to be there first. No, you're thinking of, I want to visit that place. I want to see what's there. I want to enjoy my time. I want to take my time. I want to learn things. If you're in a highway and you speed on that highway, let's say, I don't know how much you speed, but for me, 140 kilometers an hour, it's fast. For me. Maybe for you, it's not. But if I'm pressing my car 140 kilometers an hour, right, I'm moving fast. And then if I glance over to my right side window, I couldn't see anything. It's a blur, right? When you go too fast, right? It's a blur when you go too fast. Just like we are, when we move so fast in life, things become a blur. You don't see left and right. You don't see maybe your child growing up. You don't see that your neighbor is sick. You don't see that your parents are getting older. You don't see that your partner is struggling with something. Because you're moving so fast, you don't see what's beside you. It's such a blur. But when you start to slow down, right? Start to slow down to 100, maybe 90 kilometers an hour, the view on the side starts to get clearer. You start to see the mountains, you start to see the leaves, the trees, the birds, the people, you start to see the places there. It starts to become clearer. That's what we're facing now. The pandemic comes and there is a huge break to our speed, and we're forced to slow down and see what's around. So right now you're starting to notice your family, you start to notice your friends, you start to notice even yourself even. Maybe some of the things that you bury deep down, some insecurities or whatever that you bury deep down because of the pandemic, you start to unearth it and start to face it head on, which probably you should face it head on to begin with, because insecurity shouldn't be buried deep down forever. It should be dealt with. That's what the book is all about. And when you start to question, okay, life is a journey. I get it. All right, good. Now what? Well, start to think of the three components that I just mentioned. You have your destination, you have your navigation, and you have your transportation. You can start asking questions now. Okay, destination. Where do you want your life to go? Let me repeat that. Where do you want your life to go or your life to become? Okay, highlight on what do you want, because I don't know if it applies to you or not. I don't know you, but I know from experience that some of the young people that I've interacted, they never made any decision about their life ever. Big decisions. Everything was made for them. Decisions were made for them. Imagine that, right? Where to go to school, where to go to university, what courses to take, when to graduate, what job to take, and then what kind of salary you should. People make the decision for them. So now when I ask the question, and I do this sometimes with young people who ask me question, I ask them back, well, what do you want? And because they don't train themselves to think about, making their own choices, they become blank, just like blur. Like, wait, you're asking me? I thought you should tell me what I should do. Wait, you're asking me? This is new. This is new stuff now. So they become alarm goes off in their head because they never experienced having to make their own choices. And I'm not talking about 15-year-olds, okay? I'm talking about like mid-20s, early 30s. I'm talking about full-grown adults here who never made their decisions for themselves. And when somebody asks them, what do you want? Where do you want your life to go? What do you want your life to become? Then they have to start to think. And I'll give you one example, okay? This is recent, by the way. There was a doctor who DM me on Instagram. She's a doctor, and she started to tell me that I'm sick of this. I'm sick of all of this. I can't take it anymore. Right? Long hours, high pressure. Nope, I can't take it anymore. And I'm like, okay, doctors are stressed, right? It's the pandemic. Doctors are stressed. I understand that. But then as she started to tell me her story, it started to get clearer that it's not because of the long hours. It's because she's not where she wanted to be. So she told me that I never wanted to go to medical school. My mother forced me to do it. I never wanted to finish medical school. I wanted to quit, but I keep persevering for my parents. I never wanted to start housemanship, but again, I wanted to make my parents proud. So she endured many years of just pushing herself, right? It's like if you have a car, going back to the journey example, right? And you pull your handbrake up and then you press your gas, what will happen? It's very high stress for the engine, right? You can only do that for such a long time until the car breaks down. The car cannot take it. We're talking about a car, people, but this is a human being. Human beings can take it too. Where you're pressing on this car so hard, pedal to the metal, right? The engine is revving so hard, but then you're not moving anywhere because you don't have passion. Remember? You're not moving anywhere. What happens is that the engine breaks down, and then in people term, they get burned out. They get burned out. And so this particular doctor really had it, can't take it anymore, and then she decided to quit. I didn't tell her to quit. I never tell people what to do. That's my thing. I never ever tell people what to do. You make your own choices, okay? I'm just here to let you know this is your situation now. You think. So I just ask her questions about, okay, what do you really want? Is this how you want your life to become? Let's say you make your parents proud, but what about you? Are you happy? You find this meaningful? And let's say your mother becomes proud. Do you like your mother because of that? Or do you have resentment over your own parents because they forced you to do it? Is that is that what loving your parents is all about? So I started asking questions, and she made her own decision to quit. I was surprised. I'm like, okay, you quit. All right, cool. It's your choice. So she quit, and she wanted to do something else. And this is so common. I can't tell you how common it is, right? People in high-paying jobs, people in who perform well in their job, even people who you think from the outside has everything, the car, the house, everything, but then deep down they're lost. Deep down they're lost, and it's only a matter of time when they have to face that part of themselves and start to ask difficult questions. And that's what I try to do with my book. They don't if you're thinking, oh, I'm gonna read his book and find answers, sorry, no. I don't have answers in the book. I only have questions, because I believe that this is something that you have to figure out yourself. I don't believe that if I tell you what your purpose are, you're gonna be happy. Done. No, I don't think that's gonna work. People have tried to do that to you all your life, right? Tell you what to do. It doesn't work, right? Exactly. So I'm not going to repeat the same thing. I'm going to prompt you with questions, probably like show you a few options, show you that this path goes here, that path goes there, and then you choose which path you want to go. And that's what you're going to get if I don't know, decide to buy the book and read the book or not. But if not, then, having this conversation is good enough for me.
Hey, Ayman,
Yeah.
I have a question. Since your background is in psychology and you're a counselor yourself, you always mention in your book that life is a race, right? Like everyone thinks life is a race, but it really depends on your perspective. But the thing is, this life is a race ideology starts even when we're young, even from school, right? So how do we stop thinking this way? And there's also another question that also relates to how do we contrast this to the corporate culture to squeeze employees? Because some of the employees may get burnout. This is from Kyungkin. So I have my own question, and I'm relating that to employee culture as well. Because everywhere we go, we always see life is a race, but it's easier to say. How do we practice this?
Excellent question. So, I think one of the way that I can answer this question is by telling you my story in a way, because I can't, again, I can't tell you like ABC what to do, but hopefully when you hear my story, you get an idea. Not like to copy paste, like, oh, he does that, I'm gonna do the same. No, no, no. Just to get an idea that this is how I apply the whole idea of life is not a race. So I was in university. I originally took biotechnology because I love science and I thought it was the thing back then. But then I realized the science that I love is human science, right? Psychology. So I switched my majors to psychology, and a lot of people went nuts. It's like, why psychology? How? What are you going to feed your family? Huh? Grain of sand? Or lots of like questions about career and about you're not gonna be able to like feed your family or whatnot. But then I realized something. I realized that, like I said in the example that I gave you, people are going to talk about you or talk to you or question you for the rest of your life. I mean, there's no question about that, right? And each choice you make, people will question that choice. All right? Okay, clear. However, I realized that it's still my choice. I'm not saying that in a rebellious sense. Okay, don't get me wrong. I'm not advocating for being a rebel. No, 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 no. I'm not advocating the idea at all. I'm advocating for taking responsibility over your own life, over your own choices, and also the consequences of those choices, because not everything that I choose is correct. Sometimes, actually many times, I make mistakes. But taking responsibility means you own everything. You own your good choices and your bad choices. You can't get to like blame anybody for that. So I own my choice of taking psychology because that's what I want. That's what I feel like I can contribute the most, and that's where I find the most meaning, I guess. And as I grow older and as I progress in this understanding of psychology and how it applies to my career, um, it grows to become more and more clear that it's not a bad choice. But it starts from there, to make the choice of not to agree to what people say. I listened. Okay, this is the difference between a rebel and somebody who's responsible. I listened. I listened to my parents. I listened to my friends. I listened to people who give me advice. I listened, and I consider them deeply and seriously. But at the end of the day, I'm gonna make my own choice. Okay, if it's a mistake, it's okay. I'm gonna own that mistake. It's mine. It's okay. And if it turns out to be a good choice, I'm not gonna rub it onto your face and say, haha, I told you so. No, 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 no. I'm just going to focus on my own choices based on my own principles. Navigation, remember, your principles will dictate where you want to go, because I have a vague idea. I was like 20 at the time, so it was very, very young. I had a vague idea about what I want. So I had a vague idea of what the destination is. So I made the choice. How does this translate to corporate life?
Yeah.
I can't speak as an Intel employee because I'm not, but I can speak as somebody who is a part of an organization, right? You can kind of think of your organization kind of like your parents in a way, kind of, not exactly, but kind of like your parents, because they have the same, elements of what parents are: authority. They tell you, you follow, right? If not, there's consequences, there's punishment, and so on, right? There's rules. But that doesn't take away your autonomy as a person, right? So in an organization, like for example, my university, they push this idea that you have to graduate within a number of years. The faster, the better.
Yeah.
I'm talking about university sense, right? I'm taking my master's degree, and they say you should graduate in 2 years. The earlier the better. Cram everything. Graduate in 1 year. It's going to look good on your resume. And I think to myself, I listened, I consider, and I try to understand where they're coming from, and then I say, no, thank you. Are there consequences? Yeah, there are consequences. Obviously, I get called to the dean's office. So there are consequences. Obviously, there are consequences, but they're mine. They're mine, and I'm happy with my choice, even though they're not all good or they're not all smooth sailing. But overall, I'm satisfied, because the decision to graduate later, I'm talking about myself again, to graduate
Yeah.
later, to graduate slower, it's a decision I made not because I'm a rebel or not because I like to have fun first. No, it's a decision I made because I have other commitments. I have family. There was one time my son got sick. So there's decisions made because of that, because I have priorities, right?
Mhm.
But I understand university as an organization, they only see the KPI, right? Many organizations do this. They see KPI. We need to have such a such number of students graduate on time. I understand. As an organization, I understand. You want to keep your KPI good so that you get all the recognition, the accolades, the awards. I get it. I get it. I understand. But as an individual, I'm going to make my own choice. Now, does that mean that you should do the same at Intel? No. But actually, they give an idea of individual choice. And there are consequences, yes, good, bad, ugly, all of the above. But there's consequences in all your choices, right? I mean, if you follow everything to the T, everything that people tell you to do, you should do this, you should do that, you should do this. I'm not talking about breaking the law, by the way. That's different. I'm talking about
Mhm.
what people say you should do. And you just follow everything. No consequences? No, there are consequences. What about your happiness? What about your mental health? What about your family relationships? Some people they like work so hard, their family break down, right? So there are consequences to every choice you make. No question about that. But the good news that I can share with you today is that you get to choose your consequence. I see that as a good news. You get to choose your consequence. And that brings back the power of responsibility back onto you actually. It's not about being a rebel, it's about being responsible. If you believe that this is the right choice to do based on your principles, then go do it. And face the consequence, be it good or bad. If you believe this is not the right thing to do, but then you do it anyway, yeah, probably you're going to make some people happy, but at what cost? You have to think about
Mhm.
that. At what cost? Because if you're on a road, going back to the journey analogy, okay, I'm just going to stick with this analogy for the whole session. If you're on a journey, you're in your car, in your journey, and you have your GPS on. Your GPS is your navigation system, right? And your GPS says, turn right. Your GPS says clearly, turn right. But then you say, nah, no, I'm not going to turn right. No, I'm just going to keep going forward. Yeah. People say I have to keep going forward. So you keep going forward. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? I mean, your GPS was going to say recalculating, recalculating. You should turn right. Okay, turn right the next one. You keep on ignoring that. Okay, it's okay. Recalculating, you turn right the next point. You keep on ignoring that. Sooner or later, what will happen is that you're going to go further and further and further away from your actual destination that you want to go. So that's kind of what happened here. If you know you're in a situation where something is against your principle, but then you decided, you made the choice to go against your own principle, even though you know this thing is against your principle to begin with. So again, like I said in the beginning, there's no answer to my approach. There's a lot of questions.
Mhm.
There's a lot of questions. So be prepared for lots of questions, because I believe this is something you have to figure out, right?
Mhm.
This is how I figured out in my situation, but how you figure out in yours is totally up to you. So
Ayman,
yeah,
I
does
have
that
another. Yeah,
does that answer the both questions?
that answers the questions, and I also have another question based on what you answered just now.
Go
Um,
ahead.
since you mentioned that we are responsible for our own choices, right? And relating that to the working world, and you also mentioned in your book, right, that to go to your destination, you must have passion and you must have a set of principles, right, to navigate you to your destination. So in the working world, some of us, we're in that job, but we might not be that passionate. So how do you advise people who want to open and honest conversations with their managers that they want to take up a different role that they're more passionate about, because like you mentioned, that will actually increase their skills and talent, and it would benefit the whole society. You mentioned that in your book, but how do you actually what is your tip to some employees who want to open up but they're just quite shy? How do they, because being one of Intel's pillars is transparency. You have to be honest, right? So how do you steer up honest conversations and tell your managers, I know you have these set of plans, but I want to go on to this set of roles. I'm more passionate about this than this, and some of us might be afraid. So what is your tip? What is your advice?
Oh yeah. Mm, I feel that. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I do feel that because fear is an interesting emotion because fear is motivating, right? Fear is
Yeah.
motivating because fear is either motivating you to do something or don't do something. So it's a great motivator, fear, but it's a lousy inspirator, bro. It doesn't inspire. I mean, it's a good motivator. It pushes you, right? It pushes you. That's why a lot of like leaders use fear to kind of like um, get their people below them moving. They use fear. Some parents use fear to their kids, right? If you don't do this, I'm gonna smack you. So it's the same idea. If you start to see this thing as a concept, you can start to see it applies in so many different areas, not just in corporate world. It could also happen in your own house. You don't even realize it. So fear is interesting as a motivator, but it's lousy as giving inspiration. You know, I don't know about you, but I haven't met people who feel inspired by some leader who scares them. I haven't met the person yet. Maybe there's somebody somewhere out there. So fear is very interesting. Just want to mention that fear is very interesting. But this is when the whole idea of consequences of your own choices come into play. Because what are you afraid of? You're afraid of the consequence. Or to be more specific, you're afraid of the possible consequence because it hasn't happened yet, right? The possible consequence fear you, scare you. And you have this imagination in your head because you are built with, you are equipped with a set of mechanisms in your mind to protect you from harm, right? And part of that mechanism is this imagination of possible danger. Okay, so like if you walk on a late night somewhere, it's dark and you see a corner coming up, right? You're walking on the side of the building and you see a corner coming up. Somewhere in your mind starts to create this fantasy of there's somebody at that corner with a knife waiting to jump on me,
Mhm.
right? You might think, oh, that's silly. That's just, silly imagination. But you have to understand that imagination is built in so that it protects you, right? So that you anticipate danger. That's a good thing. However, when this becomes uncontrolled, unmanageable to a point where thinking becomes overthinking, and this is when you start to see people with a knife everywhere. That's not good. So what is originally designed to protect you, through, years and years of evolution, designed to protect you, now it harms you. So coming back to your question, let's say you want to voice out something, but you're afraid, right? And highlighting the corporate culture of having transparency, it's a good corporate culture. Thumbs up for that. But in order for that corporate culture to manifest, first you need to be able to create the right environment for that corporate culture to manifest. I'll give you a simple example. If, let's say, you want to um, plant an apple tree, all right? You want apples. You want to eat apples, sweet, sweet apples, right? That's like the corporate culture. The corporate culture is transparency. That's the apple. Ground in the right soil, and then have you think of, how do you take care of that seed so that that seed could probably grow to become a tree, and then you get the apples after that. You can't say I want to plant an apple tree, give me apples, without thinking of the soil, the
Mhm.
seed, the conditions that will make the seed grow. Humans are the same. We are organic creatures, just like apple tree. I'm not saying that we are apples. I'm saying that we are organic creatures, right? So we require certain environment for certain fruits to come out. So if you want, in whatever environment you're in, to have transparency as the culture, either in your corporate culture or even in your own home, by the way, you can have the same thing. You need to first think of what is the soil that I have to provide first. And this is something that leaders have to think about. They provide the soil, they provide the environment for the tree to grow. But let's say you're not the boss, you're not the leader, you're the employee. So what can you do? In the book, in a different book by the author Simon Sinek, it's the book called Leaders Eat Last. Leaders Eat Last. By the same author, Simon Sinek, the same author who wrote Infinite Game. He talks about corporate culture a lot in his book, so that's probably one of the suitable book that I would recommend for people who work in a corporate culture. So he mentioned that even if you're not the leader, it doesn't mean that you can't be leader-like, because leaders are not about positions on a professional hierarchy. No, leaders is not about the label that you put on your desk. No, leaders are your attitudes, behaviors. It's who you are. I mean, you could be the lowest person in the hierarchy chain, but you have the leadership qualities. You will start to see people start following you. I don't mean social media following. I mean that you can start to uplift people, inspire people to take action. That's a leadership quality, regardless of your position. So I would say to the individual who might think that, oh, I want to say something, be the leader that you wish you had. That's the advice that Simon Sinek gave in the book, by the way. Be the leader you wish you had. Because in the grand scheme of things, that's the one thing you can control. You can't control somebody else to be a leader, because you can't control somebody else. But you can, however, control yourself in how you improve your own skills, behavior, attitude, mindset. Those things are things that you can nurture inside yourself. And, muster the courage to say to your manager or your boss that, hey, I'm thinking of something interesting. You may be interested in it. Can I have 2 minutes of your time so you can think about it? That takes courage. That takes the ability to face the possible danger and still choose to face it anyway, because the possible danger is a maybe. It's not a guarantee. Maybe your manager will say yes, maybe your manager will say no. But the only way for you to find out for sure is for you to take the leap and actually have that conversation with your manager or your boss or your lecturer, your father or your mother, whatever. You have that conversation, and it's a difficult conversation. And difficult conversation is something that I think in the era of the pandemic is a skill that we desperately need. Like, we need to have difficult conversations with ourselves, difficult conversation with our parents, difficult conversation with our partners, our children, our boss, our colleagues, because it's everywhere. The need for difficult conversations, they're everywhere. So you can't escape it. So might as well develop the skill to handle it. That's what I would say in that situation.
Yeah.
Any more questions?
If nobody has, I have one interesting question I've been meaning
All
to
right, cool,
ask.
cool, 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 cool. No worries.
Um,
I have one more point
okay.
before I end, but I'll hold that because it's a good way to end the conversation, I guess. So I'll
Okay.
hold my last point until um all the questions are answered. At least for now, lah. At least for now.
All
Yeah.
right.
Go ahead,
Oh, by
Bella.
the way, if anybody wants to ask questions, just go ahead and ask. I'm just, throwing questions because nobody asked, so I'm taking this
Now,
opportunity to ask.
wait, Bella,
Uh
what get us intrigued about your question? If you don't ask the question, everyone will hit you. Right?
huh.
Go ahead with
Right.
your question, Bella.
Okay, so this I've been like after reading your book, I've been meaning to ask you this because earlier in this book you said you're not much of a writer, but you're more of a speaker, right? Because you're an influencer, you're a speaker, you motivate people, right? But And it's interesting because in your book you said, you have to have the passion. So applying those concepts, and now you've managed to write 7 books, right? 7 books. So
As a non-writer, yes.
yeah, okay, as a non-writer. So yeah, can you share with us how you started to build your passion? Just share with us your experience. Maybe you didn't know that you had the passion to write a book, and now you did, after 7 years. And I think it really relates to your destination and picking your passion, building up your passion, and having a set of principles, being committed to it. So can you just share with us your experience, like from a
Ah,
speaker to a writer, applying the concepts you had? I thought it was
okay.
interesting because you said you're more of a speaker than a writer.
That's a funny coincidence because your question relates to my final point. So I'm just gonna marry
Okay.
them together, yeah? Yeah, okay. So that's interesting. By the way, this is not rehearsed, yeah? People might think, they rehearsed this. No, 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 no. It's not rehearsed.
No.
So so it relates to my final point. So I'm just gonna mash them together. Yeah, passion. Okay, that's a good question. I put the analogy as fuel, right? You need fuel in your transportation, be it if you're walking, then your body needs the fuel for you to have energy to walk. If you have a car, then your car needs the petrol for the car to move, right? So fuel is a general term, means that what moves you. What moves you. That's
Mhm.
the general term of using the word fuel. It doesn't have to be, fossil fuel. So I used to think passion is just what you like to do, what you love to do, what you enjoy to do, and what makes you happy. I used to think that way. This is a foreshadowing, eh? I used to think that way. And I believe that many people probably still think that way. And I don't blame them because I was like that once upon a time. But yeah, the thing about when you start to you grow older and then you start to have all this kind of different interaction with people and you start to have interesting conversations, the thing that you previously believe start to be challenged in a way. And I like that. I like that. That's part of my job that I like. I like when my beliefs are challenged because I don't want to, what we say in Malay, syok sendiri, means that I myself in my own little world think that, oh, I have everything figured out, I'm so perfect. I don't want to be that way. I want to be challenged. So this is one of the concept that was challenged, and I'm glad it did, because I used to think passion equals happiness.
Mhm.
But then the whole idea of happiness starts to be put under the microscope. Like, is happiness the point? Because if you study like human emotions, happiness is one of them. You call them happy, joy, like laughter, whatever you want to call that. But it's not the only emotion we feel, right?
No.
If you look at the 5 basic emotions of a human being, there's happy or joy, there's anger, fear, disgust, and then there's sadness. There's 5 basic emotions. You probably, if you're a parent, you probably know of the Disney movie Inside Out in 2015. Yeah, that's based on actual psychology behind it. The 5 basic emotions, it's as depicted in the movie. Happiness is just one of the many emotions that you can feel, and that is the 5 basic emotions, by the way. Okay, 5 basic emotions, which means as you grow older, these 5 basic emotions can be more complicated. And you and I both know, as an adult, we don't just feel 5 things.
Yeah.
We feel a whole host of variety of things, and there's a
Yeah.
model in psychology which maps how many feelings that you can feel. They use probably mathematics or permutations or whatnot, but they start to make all these combinations, and they found about 400 different emotions that you can
Wow.
feel from the 5 basic emotions. Yeah,
Cool.
from the 5 basic emotions you can map a whole slew of other emotions. Like, for example, anger is one basic emotions, but anger can also be accompanied with fear. Anger and fear.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting. So that's our experience when we become adults. So understanding this, and you put happiness as the point of your life, how are you going to achieve that? Because you can't be just happy, right? So I start to think of this idea of, okay, happiness as the point, and I start to challenge that. Is happiness the point? And long story short, I figured out, no, it's not. That's not the point. Because if you look in history, the great people that you admire, whether it be people in, in what kind of history they want, like political history or scientific history or technology history, what kind of history you want to go to, just look at their life and you start to realize that this person actually went through a lot of stuff, right? In psychology, you learn of the history of each of the pioneers of certain theories, like Freud, Sigmund Freud, Carl Jung, these personalities, right? You think of them, oh, they're such great people, but then you go into their life, you start to realize, oh, this come from a divorced family. This person had a breakdown early in life. This person had a horrible marriage. There's so many different things happening there. But then they ended up producing this meaningful piece of work that contributes to humanity up until this day, beyond their lifetime. And you can see that in all the people you admire, all the public figures, especially people in history. Look at people in history, because their life is over, so you can see their progression from beginning to end. It's there. They don't just feel happy. They experience sadness, they experience pain, they experience disappointment, they experience hardship, some more than others. So then I start to apply to myself, Does passion means that I have to be happy all the time? No. And even when I reflect back on my career experience, I can pinpoint many situations when in my line of work there are things that I hate, but I love my job. You see, it's not a juxtaposition. No, there are some things in my line of work that I don't like, I hate, right? But overall, I love this thing that I'm doing. And the key part of that is not that I focus on being happy, but I focus on what brings meaning to whatever that I do. That's the word that I'm relating to passion now. It's not about happiness, it's about meaningful. Is what you do meaningful? It's not like it's what you do makes you happy, it's what you do meaningful. And then you say correctly that, I'm not a writer, I'm not. I'm a speaker. I can speak easier than I can write. If you ask me to sit down and write a book, I mean, all my books take a long time to write because I don't like the process. But I find the whole thing meaningful. Do you get my point? I
Yeah.
don't like the process, but I find the whole thing meaningful. It fulfills a part of me. So that's why I keep on doing it, even though I don't like it, uh, the process of doing it.
Mhm.
So I ask the question to you, back to you, like the thing that you're doing right now, is it meaningful to you? Because best case scenario is that it's meaningful regardless of whether it's enjoyable or not. But hopefully, because it's meaningful, you start to see enjoyment coming.
Mm.
Because it's meaningful, you start to see enjoyment coming. That's what I feel like when I write books. It's not enjoy in it. I don't feel the enjoyment doing it,
Mhm.
but when you write it down and then when you finish the book and then when you discuss the book with people, I enjoy that. That's meaningful. And then another point relating to meaningfulness and writing a book is that this is my legacy. You know,
Mhm.
over the course of history, books survive.
Yeah.
Over the
That's
course
true.
of history, books survive. One of the major things why you still hear about Plato, Aristotle, Einstein is the writing that they do. So even though I don't like it, but I think about, my children are going to read it, right?
Yeah.
After I'm gone. Probably some people who I don't meet today may read it like 20 years from now. I don't know. I'm not sure, but having that thought moves me. That's the fuel. And that's what brings meaning to the whole endeavor. So coming back to you, do you find your job meaningful? Do you find your endeavor meaningful? Now you're gonna find joy, sadness, anger, all these different emotions mixed into your whole experience. But the question is it meaningful? Back to the doctor that I mentioned before, who end up quitting.
Yeah.
It's not the long hours. It's not the pressure. Mind you, all doctors feel that. They have long hours. They're in a high pressure environment. They have to perform well. Some doctors even lose sleep to a point where they sleep standing up. So
Tough.
so they all feel this, but why some doctors end up like still can find some enjoyment in their work, still go all out in being a doctor, and some, stop halfway, like the one example that I showed you. It's because she doesn't find it meaningful. And this is not a judgment on her character. You can't say that. You can't say that, oh, she's a bad person because she doesn't find being a doctor meaningful. No, she wants to help people. She still do, but not with being a doctor. You get my point? You can help
Yeah.
people in so many different ways, not just being a doctor, right? Like you, the people at Intel, you're helping people, right? Producing software that will help people make their life easier. You're helping people. But do you find that meaningful? That's passion. It does. So the question now becomes less of a question of, are you happy? No. I like to ask people, is your life meaningful? I mean, if the answer is yes, keep going. Good job. But oftentimes the answer is no. That's why they become lost. That's why they're in a rut. That's why they feel like they need help. And if you are in that situation, then get help. You know, get help. So don't feel like you have to do all of it alone. So I guess that's how I would answer that question, and how it would make sense that somebody who's not a writer can write 7 books. I'm not saying that I'm like great or skillful. I had tons of help in
Yeah.
writing each book, by the way. So it's just a matter of, do you find the process meaningful? And I did. I did. So even though I don't like writing books still, I have a new book coming up and I don't like the process. But still, because I'm thinking of the meaning of it all, that's what keeps me going.
Yeah. It's a good question. I mean, it's a good answer. I mean, I've been wanting to be an author when I like to write. It's just that, don't have the time. But now that you mentioned it, do you find it meaningful? Yes, I do find it meaningful. I just need to find the right time. And we have some
Right, right.
comments
That's the
from,
thing. That's the Bella,
yeah,
Bella. That's a good point. That's a good point.
right.
When you start to put happiness as the metric,
Yeah.
when something doesn't give you happiness, you don't do it.
Mm.
Even though it's meaningful, can?
True.
Can I give you like a interesting slash scary statistic?
Okay, yeah, sure. Go ahead.
Okay. For those who have kids, hear me out. There's a study. There's a study done that found, you can check. Okay, if you want to refer to like a place where you can see this, you can refer to Dr. John Gottman's work. Dr. John Gottman, Gottman. He's a psychologist. He's an expert in relationship. So in his book, The 7 Principles of Making Marriage Work, that's the book that I'm referring to. He quotes a study that says couples' happiness goes down
Uh-huh.
after having the first child. Scary, right? Scary, yeah? Yeah, those people who are single, I'm sorry. But if you stop right there, you may be thinking, oh, in that case, I don't want to have kids then.
Oh.
But that's the wrong way of seeing the situation.
Mm.
You see, when you start to put happiness as the sole metric of measuring the worth of your life, no wonder you think that, alamak, no need to have a child lah. Child doesn't make me happy. What it means, if you ask any parents, they will tell you this. Of course, I'm not happy. Why? Because I worry a lot about my son. I worry about my daughter. And
Yes, me
sometimes
too.
they drive me crazy. I lose sleep. I lose sleep at night.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes they poop on me. They pee on me. Sometimes they puke. Sometimes in the mall, in front of other people.
Yes, has
Obviously, happiness goes down. But this is what the study did not what do you say? Did not include in their metric because they only measure happiness, right?
mm-hmm.
They don't measure anything else. If they try to measure, you know, do they find it meaningful? I'm sure majority of the parents will say, yeah, I wouldn't trade this. Even though, yes, I don't sleep well at night because my baby cries. I
Yeah.
think about my son, even though I'm at work, but I'm thinking about my son. Is he doing okay? Is he well? Right? I mean, just this morning, my son cries because I have to go to work, and I think about that. I think about that, right? So yes, in terms of happiness, no argument there. There's happiness goes up and down once you become a parent. But in terms of meaning, whew, no question. No question. I mean, being responsible for raising a human being, seeing a human being growing in front of your eyes. Sometimes they cry, yes, but sometimes they laugh.
Yeah.
Sometimes they run at you and want a hug. And at night they want you by their side. They don't want anybody else. I mean, you can't trade that for anything else. So even though in terms of happiness, yeah, I see that as a lousy metric, but in terms of meaning, no question, no question. So yeah, that's very interesting. So when you put a different metric now, so you want to write a book, right, Bella? Instead of
Mm-hmm.
saying, oh, I don't like the process, I don't have the time for it, ask your question, what would writing this book mean? And then you see, I'll keep it mysterious. See what happens. Just
Okay.
change that part. Just change that part and see what happens.
All right.
Mm.
Um.
We are nearly to 11:30, but I wanted to open it to the floor
Yes.
to see if there's a question from any one of you. Feel free to unmute yourself.
We have some comments. When Shin said having meaning in life is equal to long-term happiness. That's true. Um. Oh, books and paintings. Ayman, you mentioned what is our legacy besides books, paintings.
Yeah.
Zifeng Zifeng wrote. Oh, and someone said, Tiam Lee said, I agree with the overthinking part. I think everyone overthinks too much. Right. If nobody has question, I do have one more.
Uh,
Last one.
Bella,
you
uh,
know?
Bella, let,
Okay.
let, let me ask one question to
Yeah,
I.
yeah, go ahead. Yeah, I don't wanna me.
Yeah. So
Go
and
ahead.
I really encourage those people in the call to ask if you really have doubts throughout
Yes,
all the questions
ask.
that have been asked by
Ask or
I.
type.
And the
Just
question
type it
from me,
out.
Aiman, is that you mentioned about uh, mm, the passion is equal to what you find meaningful, right? So the first parameter there would be meaningful, right? So how can I find the meaningful? Is it when I think about something? Is that the back of the something is meaning is happiness, is probably sadness, is probably fear, or probably what? How can I know a particular items that is meaningful so that I can make this as a navigation for my destination, right? So how can I know that, Aiman?
That's a very good question. I like that question. One way, I'm not saying this is the only way, okay? One way you can start to investigate what is meaningful to you is to start thinking in terms of contribution. Start to think in terms of contribution. What can you give? Meaning doesn't necessarily just think of like me, or what I gain from this, what I get from this. I mean, that's part of it, yeah, for sure. But I believe the right way to go about doing it is to ask, what can you give? that you want to give, not that you have to give it, but you want to give, you want to contribute that. And I say this, there's a reason for that. I say this because, um, depression, for example, depression. It's a serious mental illness. It's diagnosable. There's a genetic component and environment component. No doubt about that. People who have depression should definitely go see a professional, get medication if you have to, and therapy. All right. However, um, one of the possible way is to help others. That's one of the possible way. Not the only way. So don't get me wrong, not the only way, but one of the ways that if you want to like improve your mood is to help somebody else. Is to help somebody else. And this is well documented. It really helps with your mood, helps you, actually lifts you up, even temporarily. That's fine. Even if you get that moment of joy. I mean, for somebody who's depressed, I mean, come on, that's priceless. So I would apply the same concept here. Um, Depression or no depression, helping others, or in other way, what you can contribute is one of those ways that you can discover what's meaningful for you. And I say what's meaningful for you with an highlight. Put a yellow highlighter on for you part, right? Because our contributions are different. How I contribute doesn't necessarily mean you have to contribute the same way. But one thing is for sure, contribute at Intel or outside of Intel. Contribute and give what you want to give, and see what happens. See what happens. And this requires a little bit of some trial and error. I would say trial and error, because you don't know for sure unless you actually try something, right? So if you're like totally clueless, I mean, start somewhere, start anywhere. Just start with a charity, with a volunteer, initiative. I'm not sure if Intel probably has a CSR initiative that's probably employees can be a part of. Start
Yeah.
somewhere. If you're totally clueless, start somewhere where you feel like, this kind of looks interesting. I'm gonna give it a try. And it's only by trying that you can, cross off your list the things that are not possible or possible, right? And that's how I did it. That's how a lot of people do it in discovering what's meaningful for them. And I think it's quite a practical way to move forward. But what is definitely not the way is to just sit there and think about it. Or should I
Mm.
say overthink it, you know? Just try something and discover. And again, because we have established that life is not a race, you're not fighting against time. I mean, in a way, yeah, because death is coming whenever, nobody knows. But if you ask me, do I want to die on the road of overthinking or on the road of figuring out what's meaningful for me? I would choose second option. You know, I mean, that's a good way to die. What, right? To die figuring out what's meaningful for you. That's a good way to die, as opposed to die, you know, on your rocking chair. You worry, you think you're moving, but you're not going anywhere. Like a rocking chair. That's what worry is. So I hope that helps some people
Yep.
in getting out of their comfort zone and trying to figure out what's meaningful for them. It's gonna take time, so I hope you be patient with yourself. Each of us has our own time. Some people figure out sooner, some people figure out later. Some people figure out when they're retired. So don't think that you have a deadline to catch. Yeah, there are people who, when they retire, they figure out,
Yeah.
oh, this is what I want to do with my life. When they
Yeah.
retire, they're like 60, but no, they still have time. They still have time to figure things out, and good for them. Good for them. Yeah.
I'm impressed with the way of you articulating all this, and not just that, but also giving a very sense. And I believe that you probably give a very deep thought on those things that you mentioned about. Are you rather to die thinking about finding out the meaning of that to you rather than doing something else? I think that is a very good deep thoughts that you probably have had put it there. And by that, there's a very interesting question from James,
Oh,
he mentioned about asking about how often do you reflect, evaluate on your process and also the direction. Is it the right one for you or not?
evaluate progress or direction.
Good question. How often do I reflect? Like personally, how often do I reflect
Yes,
and reevaluate?
and yes. Do you evaluate the process and the direction? Is it the right one, or
Ooh,
do you screw up?
good question. I reflect whenever I feel certain intense emotion, which is a fancy way of saying every day lah. Every day you feel certain emotion, kan? Like when I'm angry, I reflect. When I'm sad, I reflect. Sometimes when I'm happy, I reflect too. Like why am I happy? So all these changes that your body responds to these changes, right? And you reflect, especially anger. I find anger very interesting. Out of all the emotions, I would say anger is the most reflective for me, because whenever I feel angry, I always number one, I don't talk to anybody when I'm angry. My wife knows this. My wife understands this. Whenever I'm angry, she knows she needs to give me time. And sometimes I would say, honey, I'm angry. Give me 10 minutes. Give me 20. Give me some time. And this is an understanding that we already have in our relationship. So in anger, you reflect a lot on your ego. I mean, why you're angry to begin with, and what path are you on right now? I mean, that goes to your question about reevaluating your direction and reevaluating your progress and your process. I For me, anger is the most reflective of all emotions. You probably don't anticipate anger to be the key, but it's really a matter of how you choose to deal with whatever situation you're in right now. To me, maybe because of my personality or because of the circumstances I'm in, anger does it for me. Whenever I feel angry, I always question why. Why are you angry? Because to me, anger is a reaction of something's not right, right? That's why you feel angry. Something's not right, and then I ask myself, what is that thing that's not right? Is it that big of a deal? Really, you want to get angry because of that? And usually that's how I calm down, because most of the times I'm angry about things that don't even matter. When you look at the grand scheme of things, yeah, the grand scheme of things, you look at your destination that you want to go, you look at your navigation, and you start to realize you get angry on petty stuff. I'm talking to myself lah, basically. You get angry about petty stuff, not like the big stuff. So that's how I will answer that question. Whenever I feel intense emotion, especially anger, I would be self-reflective. Yeah.
Mm. Ivan, there's one more question for the chat. I just read out for you.
Yeah, go ahead.
From Zifeng asked that what if you find doing something meaningful and you are passionate about it, but it would not fit your family?
It won't be, yeah, you won't
You
be able to feed your
want
family.
you
Oh, feed.
Yeah,
fit.
Oh, okay, okay, okay.
yeah, you find something meaningful, but you're passionate about it, but you can't feed your family.
Interesting question. I like it. Okay, two ways. I can answer the question in two ways. Number one, if we have more time and the person is in front of me, um, I might drill this person with questions to really investigate. Are you sure you can't feed your family with that?
Hmm.
Because in the beginning, that's what people say about psychology to me. In the beginning, one of the concern that people have when I switch to psychology is that, what are you going to do with psychology degree, man? How are you going to feed your family? Really, that's what I hear. And and I ended up okay, feeding my family. They eat fine. I'm actually like gaining weight right now, so I'm eating fine too. So that's the first way that I will answer that question, is to drill you to to be really, really sure. Like, are you sure there's no way at all that you can find a way to harness your passion and what you find meaningful to a type of profession? And the way I see profession is different. For a lot of people, profession is you get your resume, you apply, you get an interview, and then you got a job. That's one way to have a profession. Another way to have a profession is to create yourself. And I know, easier said than done. I get it. But I'm telling you that's an option. That's an option, right? I'm telling you that as an option. So that's one way. The other way is what the late Sir Ken Robinson actually mentioned in the book that I read 10 years ago. And he said that passion doesn't have to be your profession. Who says that passion has to be your profession? Nobody says that. We assume that passion should be our profession, but no. Passion can be something you do on the weekends. But during the weekdays, you do work, right? Work that can enable you to feed your family. And I hope feeding your family is a meaningful thing for you. I hope so. So you get to feed your family with the work that you do. I mean, you don't hate your job, or the job is not abusive to you. So it's like it's a kind of job that you can do well, that you can feed your family. You're not really passionate about it, it's fine, but you can do well. You know, there's plenty of jobs like that out there. Passion, right? A thing that you find meaningful. So, in a way, overall picture, you get to fulfill that part of yourself that desires for passion and desires for meaning. And at the same time, you get to fulfill your responsibility to feed your family. This is a quite a practical way of looking at it, and I quite like this option as well. But those are the two ways that I can approach this issue. Either you find a way to make it a profession, or you don't have to make it a profession. You can just make it like a something you do on the weekends, or something that you do on the side, or something like that.
I mean, that's a good techniques, right? I want to have a follow-up question on that one. You mentioned about if that person is in front of you, you're going to drill that person so that you get something out that conflicting with his belief, right? So my question is,
Conversation. I wouldn't. I think the word drill is probably too
okay,
brutal. I will have a conversation with the person.
okay. So if we don't have Aiman in front of us, right, how can we drill ourselves so that we can find it within ourselves, actually, whatever that you mentioned about, and deliberately say, hey, like, again, back to the question, what would it be and how can we drill ourselves having conversation to build ourselves?
All right, so that's a good question. Okay, if you want to do this exercise on your own, if you want to take option one, okay, let's say you have certain thing that you find passionate about and you find meaning in it, but you don't see that this is something that could feed your family. All right, so number one, what's your idea of a job? Is your idea of a job is, resume, interview, hiring, and then you get a job, you get your salary by the end of the month? Is that your only concept of a job? If your answer is yes, I'm asking you expand that. Okay, the way you expand that is to really go into the atoms of what make a job a job. And to make this discussion short, if you think about it, a job is nothing more, nothing less than you using whatever that you have, your skills, your capabilities, your passion, to solve somebody's problem, and they pay you for it. Let me repeat that. A job is you solving somebody's problem and they pay you for it. That's a job. And I challenge you, try to apply this definition anywhere it fits. When you go to the cafe, you go to eat, that person has a job. Why? Because that person solves your problem, hunger, right?
Hmm.
At your home, somebody is picking up your trash, right? That person has a job because he is solving your problem. That is, that trash has to go somewhere, right? At Intel, you solve like millions of billions of people's problems by providing software. You have a job. So go back to whatever that you find meaningful, whatever that is, and try to, is there a problem that I can solve with this? And if the answer is yes, there could be a potential possible career for you. That's how I would, I had this conversation with myself, by the way. that's how I had this conversation with myself, and that's how I ended up doing this, as opposed to something else, because I realized that, okay, I have psychology, I know how to speak, I can speak well, okay, I like to listen to people's problems, and I like to, if people's problems are like puzzles, they're interesting, and I like to help them help themselves. So this is what I do. And people like you guys, you pay me to do this, so because I solve your problem, right? So I don't mean to put you on the spot, but that's the idea. Okay, having a job means you solve somebody's problem and they pay you to do it, and they pay you gladly because you solve their problem. That's the transaction. The transaction is that you solve this problem and I pay you, and that's normal. That's what a job is. So we have that conversation. Hopefully it's an interesting one.
Okay, very good. I will want to open up for one more question to everyone. If there's none, I will get Bella to ask. But last question then to conclude. Yeah, anyone from chat? I think you can put in the chat.
Yeah, don't be shy. We have you can type it out in the chat, or you can unmute yourself and ask your questions directly to Aiman. This is your chance, by the way, to talk with an author. Okay.
Yeah, Bella, go ahead.
All right. Okay. And maybe this is probably my last question, and we can conclude this. Your title is called Unfollow the Flow, right? And people always say, go with the flow, lah. Just go with the flow. Just follow the flow. Why is it a bad advice? You mentioned that in your book. Why is it a bad advice?
Yeah. This is one of those things that a previous belief of mine gets challenged. So I used to believe that go with the flow is a good advice. You can imagine lah, me being like 18, 19, 20 years old, go with the flow, chill, relax. I think go with the flow, for me at least, is a reaction to being confined with so many rules and procedures. That's why I react by saying, go with the flow, right? Because I've been stuck with the school system and all that, people telling me what to do, and I admit this is the rebel part of me. I admit that this is the rebel part of me. That's probably why go with the flow is bad advice, because it was born out of this rebellious nature to not follow anything and just I'm gonna decide for myself, I'm gonna go with the flow. But actually, if you really take 2 minutes to think about it, you start to see that go with the flow starts to break down really, really quickly, because for a lot of people, they get to where they are right now because they go with the flow. They get to end up with a job that they hate because they go with the flow. What's the flow? The flow is whatever people tell you to do, whatever the expectation is, whatever that you feel like doing. All those things are lousy indicators of direction. Whatever you feel like doing, that's a lousy indicator. Whatever people tell you to do, that's also a lousy indicator. A better indicator is to have a set of principles. That's a better indicator. Meaning you don't go with the flow, but you navigate your sail, man. Like you're on a boat in an ocean. If you go with the flow, that ocean is going to wreck you, because you don't know where the flow of the ocean is going to take you, right? The flow of the ocean owes you nothing. But you can make a choice, coming back to the whole idea of individual choice, to navigate your sail. You have your sail, you have a compass, you have your rudder, you have everything that you need to have in order for you to navigate. You know how to read the stars, you have your GPS, whatever that you use. So navigate. navigate. Go with the flow is, I think, a reaction to somebody who probably don't know what they want, don't know where they're going, so they just go with the flow. But just take some time to think, right? And be okay with taking chances, making a decision. Another thing that I realized with going with the flow is that they want to blame it on the flow, right? Oh, this is bad decision because of this, right? Because of the flow, whatever that flow is. But so they don't want to take the responsibility of actually you made that choice, so you have to own it. But when you unfollow the flow and start to create your own decisions, make your own decision, even if it ends up to be a bad one. Okay, I'm not saying all your decisions are going to be good, but even if it ends up being a bad decision, it is still your decision. That's the point. It's your decision. You thought of it, you considered it, and you executed it. If it's good, great. If it's bad, still, that's a learning opportunity that you can use to better yourself for the next one. So either way, it's a win-win proposition if you unfollow the flow and navigate your sail. But if you go with the flow, then you are essentially, right, giving your steering wheel to something else or somebody else. The steering wheel to your life, right? Somebody else makes your decision for you. The flow makes the decision for you. That's why I say go with the flow is bad advice. I used to think it's good advice, to be fair. So I'm not, bashing on somebody who still believe that way, because I used to be that. I'm just saying that what I learned from my life experience is that it's not the case. You have to plan, you have to know what you want, or at least make an attempt. Make some form of your own life decision, and take responsibility for it. Don't blame anyone. Learn from the process from beginning to end.
Right.
Right. Thanks,
Thanks.
Aiman.
Thanks,
Very
Aiman.
good answer.
This is one of the longest session that we ever had. We have
Really?
11:54 right now. I think one of the
Okay.
longest one. If someone in the members wanted to learn more about you, probably connect to you, would you share about how they do so?
Okay, yeah, certainly. If ever you want to get in touch with me, the easiest way would be through my website. It's just my name, aimanazlan.com. You can know basically whatever that you want to know about my professional life, like my books, my online classes, my profile, and also my social media presence. They're all there. That's how you can get in touch with me, and also my email is also there. So that's easiest. aimanazlan.com. That's it.
Right. Thank you, Aiman. And hope that you enjoy the session and learn from Aiman. Do tune in and subscribe. If you like this video, you can check out the conversation that we have with Meng Chai on how you could take charge of your career. It will help you to get some insight and how you could level up your career. Thank you for watching, and I'll be seeing you again in the next video. Happy learning!